Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined this Thursday by Mr. Denny Carter and Kyle Dvorchak, where we are going to break down the entire Week 2 slate, except for Thursday Night Football, because we kind of already did that on Tuesday, and the game is going to be happening Thursday evening, so it won't be of much use to you on Friday morning. So we're going to talk about the Bears at the Texans, the Bengals at the Chiefs, the Saints at the Cowboys, the Rams at the Cardinals, the Browns at the Jaguars, every game. By the way, check out the most recent Galaxy Brains between Denny and I, where we talk about some things we wish we had known heading into Week 1, Denny. Yeah. And one of them was, listen, I'm not trying to rag on the guy, but we wish we had known Marvin Harrison Jr. was slow. Coming into Week 1, we really, really wish we had known that, Kyle. And Kyle already coping, wearing his Buckeyes hat.
Crying.
If you're listening, you can't see the Buckeyes hat, but you can tell he's been crying.
Oh, and his Ohio State University
Buckeye strong, baby.
Yeah, so, just to set it up real quick. So Next Gen Stats tracked Marvin Harrison Jr. at 16 miles per hour in Week 1 against the Bills, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, that was the slowest of any player.
I think it was 1799 out of 1800 of like the slowest first week rookie receiver speeds over like some time, or not even, it was something like that, but it was the second slowest.
I have it here. It's from ESPN Seth Walter, who has good access to all of the like super advanced player tracking data. 1,730 games played by an individual wide receiver with at least 25 snaps. So this gives us access to not just ball carrier data, which like the ball carrier data is fun, but I don't think it's really good.
Anyone can go 21 miles an hour as a ball.
I mean, Chase Brown's clearly the Bengals' backup running back and a special teamer, and that dude hit 21 last year with the ball in his hand.
He clocked Denny at 19.9.
Yeah, Denny had a pretty good runway, and he was pushing for 20. So, point being, 1,730 games, receivers 25 snaps since the start of last season. Marvin Harrison Jr.'s top speed ranks 1699, so 31 player games shy of the slowest top speed among receivers.
Man,
all right. So
would have been nice to know. Would have been nice to know if one person reported, he's slow.
So we'll start with this. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. is not slow. Okay,
you say so.
Is it obvious?
No, it is, because in college he was tracked at 22 miles an hour regularly.
No, the Big Ten cooks the gun, man. The Big Ten, they're always
this was GPS data. This is GPS data.
This is real data, obviously. Okay. But here's the thing I want to argue. Okay, look, we're talking about a guy. These are the options. Okay, so he's not slow, so we're crossing that out. Here are the other options. He doesn't care. He's unprepared. Those are the two. So which is it?
I've seen this floated out, and this is, I mean, it's cope that I like vaguely kind of buy. I don't care too much. Is that, everyone's like, well, he's running a lot of vertical routes. A lot of them were stop and go or like curl routes where, I mean, you look at the one, he had a drop in this game, but he was wide open, and it took Kyler a while to get to the read progression. He's just kind of sitting there wide open in the zone for a while because he runs like 12 yards, hooks, and is like waiting, and then he drops it. Of course, he's probably used to the timing and wasn't, it was like, oh, well, I guess I'm not getting the ball. Oh, there it is. Whoops. So a lot of the film watchers are saying, well, even though they're vertical routes, they're not routes designed for him to get the top speed. And I'm like, that's the good stuff, man. Put it in my veins.
That's a lot of cope, man. That's a lot of cope.
Wow. Kyle's tear-stained Buckeyes hat. He doesn't care. He's over it. He's not bothered by it at all.
Yeah.
I am not bothered by starting the show.
Okay.
But yeah, by the way, Galaxy Brains, 3 things we wish we had known. Marvin slow, Kirk cooked, CMC hurt. Check it out wherever Galaxy Brains is available. Your local Walgreens and CVS. The Bears and Texans each arrive in Houston coming off a victory. One of them convincing, one of them not so much. Kyle Dvorchak. We will begin with the Texans, where Week 1 seemed to unfold as expected in the receiver core. Nico Collins was the alpha. Steph Diggs was the heavily utilized number 2. And Tank Dell, seemingly the clear number 3, but still pretty involved. Is it as clear as I just made it sound, or is the receiver breakdown there a little more complicated?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of interesting wrinkles to this because it's 3 super talented receivers. And when you dig into the data, you can keep digging and finding interesting stuff. Dell ran a route on 87% of the team's dropbacks. That was, I believe, one more route than we had for Nico Collins, one fewer route than Stephon Diggs. Point being, they just all ran the vast majority of the routes. Dell's snap share was a lot lower because anytime they chose to run, they're running a decent amount out of 12 personnel. They were like, hey, guy who broke his leg pass blocking or run blocking, you're not going to be in on this one. And that's mostly okay. It's a run play. And he was even out there for a tiny bit of 12 personnel on passing plays. So for the most part, if he's only off the field on run plays, really not a big deal. And he got targeted as if he was, I don't say number one, but a true target earner. 23% target share, 44% of the air yards. Those are great numbers. It was just his snap share is low because when they're running the football, they don't put the tiny guy out there. That will, on occasion, lead to a play action snap from the 6 that ends up going into Brevin Jordan's hands, right? The 12th personnel, the second tight end. But it's going to be pretty rare. As far as concerns go, my concern for Tank Dell's routes heading into the season was reasonably high. It's how do you distribute all these routes? This quelled those concerns to me to the best it could have.
I really agree. Tank Dell, I was on high alert, as you know, and not like he's totally out of the woods yet, but I thought it was about a best case scenario for Tank Dell's week 1 usage. Denny, it was not a best case scenario week 1 for Rome Odunze, who he caught a ball. If you look at the box score, what the box score will not show you was that it was batted into the air like a fly ball to Dan Ugla in the 2011 Florida Marlins. It was the flukiest reception to end all fluky receptions. Besides that, what did we see from the Bears receiver core in week 1, and how might things change if Rome sits this weekend with his MCL injury?
All right, I'm going to make this quick as possible. I'll say that the underlying data doesn't make me too worried about this passing attack. I think that Shane Waldron has a good grip on what he wants to do here. It wasn't like a fraudulent run first sort of thing. No. Caleb Williams was really bad from a clean pocket. That's what it comes down to that. If he gets better.
Marvin, not good. Caleb, not good.
Yeah, curious. I don't know. Nobody's good anymore. Anyway, So Caleb, if he can be better from the pocket, then things will get much better. Now, Romadunze out. That means just an unbelievable target rate, I think, for both Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. Last week, Keenan Allen, 38% target share, 50% air yard share. DJ Moore, 28% of the targets and 25% of the air yards. DJ Moore had an ADOT of 4.4, folks. We were talking scam city for DJ Moore.
Please.
The Texans, the Texans play as much too high safety as anyone in the league, played the 5th most last year, played the 2nd most in week 1 against the Colts.
Look where that got him.
Didn't work because you got a guy who can throw it far. Which I think both Keenan and DJ Moore are really good plays, but I think this looks more like a DJ Moore sort of game. I just want to say Bears were top 10 in early down pass rate in week 1. I think things are gonna be okay for everybody in this offense.
Yeah, 2 real quick thoughts. Caleb, I've already said it probably almost every podcast we've done this week, where I really just think it was nerves for Caleb.
I did too.
And he looked physically ready.
That's why I said he was so nervous his feet turned to quicksand.
It's true. Caleb, he looks physically ready, and his arm looked ready. He was just out of sync. Maybe it takes more than 1 week to get in sync. I believe he will get into sync. Keenan Allen, I'm a little more worried because talk about things we wish we had known. Week 1, why is Keenan still being listed with his heel and limited in practice every day? He had the massive target share, Denny, but he did go to the blue tent once. He came out limping after an end zone target. He did not practice this Wednesday. Not concerned about him sitting in week 2, but not striking me as a guy who's particularly close to full health. And I do find that concerning. Yeah.
I do want to say that Gerald Everett appears to be the primary pass catching tight end over Cole Kmet.
You guys are so quick to shovel dirt on Cole Kmet's grave.
I'm sorry, man.
Who's quick to shovel dirt on Cole Kmet's grave? His offensive coordinator.
Hey, real quick, do either of you know Gerald Everett's week 1 stat line?
Yeah, 1 catch.
1 catch for what, Denny?
1 yard.
-1 yards.
No.
1 catch for negative.
I don't get. That's not what I'm saying.
So Pat, where did you rank Cole Kmet backup tight end?
Listen, don't worry about it.
Neither of them are useful. I think to Denny's point is they have a guy who runs a lot of useless routes in Gerald Everett, and they have a guy who might be better at football who doesn't run any routes in Cole Kmet. So don't play either of them.
He's a lot better than Gerald Everett, but Gerald Everett is just the classic. He's good enough to get open, not good enough to do anything other than that. Kyle, anything of interest with regards to DeAndre Swift, who had a really, really quiet week 1? Really, one of the strangest game scripts you'll ever see, because the Bears fell behind 17-0. and then storm back without scoring a touchdown. So really, this was Bears Titans. If you can have spare 20 minutes to watch the condensed game, it was one of the weirder games you'll ever see. But anything of interest, Kyle, with DeAndre?
Yeah, I mean, I got to give him a little bit of credit. He outcarried his backups 10-4. He ran 20 routes to the backups combined 10 routes. Roschon Johnson was pseudo-healthy scratch. He was on the injury report through Friday, but cleared on Friday. Still could argue maybe it was related, but does it even matter? Like, he's not going to play if he ends up being healthy. I get, he is the clear number one back, and there's a bit of a gap between him and number two. The offense didn't look great and still didn't care about running the football. And DeAndre Swift wasn't particularly efficient. I guess he still ranks in the RB3 range because he's getting RB3 shares of the pie. Now the pie needs to be better this week.
Hopefully the Bears meet the moment and we get a shootout with the Texans. Real quick, by the way, the Texans, CJ Stroud, he attempted like barely over 30 passes and a pretty high score.
Yeah.
Is Bobby back on his bull bleep?
Well, he barely beat the fraud allegations. He was like 2% over expected on first downs. But listen, they were getting everything they wanted on the ground. They were pounding the Colts into submission over. The Colts, talking about too high, they had their guys outside the stadium. Okay, like Mixon was facing the most friendly boxes that you could ever imagine, and so they just took advantage of that. So I'm not saying much about Bobby in that game. I think that this game will be kind of revealing about what he does.
Yeah, the moment the running stops working and you continue to do it, that's when we start to pile on you. It's like, why are you continuing to do this thing that is clearly ineffective? It worked last week, so you kind of got to give him credit for doing what worked.
I forgot that sometimes the run actually works. To be clear, playing PFF Bobby a fraud, not CJ Stroud. Moving on to the Lions and the Buccaneers. The Bucs, they meet up in Detroit. These two teams, the highest over-under of the young season, Denny. It was actually not an overly impressive week one for the Lions passing attack outside of Jameson Williams' ongoing breakout. One game blip, or might this be a different style of offense this season? They finally figured out Jared Goff, or did the Lions just resume being an elite attack this weekend?
Well, I think the Lions took advantage of.
Don't tell me that they ran again.
The Lions took advantage of a Rams secondary that A is bad, and they're going to get roasted all season, and B plays a significant, not a huge amount, but a significant amount of man-to-man coverage, and so Jameson Williams just burned these guys all day, right? And he had a 70% air yard share or whatever. This game is different. This game is totally different. The Bucs, they play a lot of, I know all I've been talking about this whole time, but it's two high safeties. They do play a lot of two high safeties. Last year in the playoffs against Detroit, they had two high safeties on 41% of them, their snaps. That led to 11 catches on 13 targets for Amon-Ra St. Brown. So this is a St. Brown game. I think that this game has a lot of, shootout potential. The over-under has gone up by 3 points over the past couple of days. So St. Brown is going to get his. I'm not saying Jameson Williams is not, but it doesn't really shape up as a Jameson sort of game.
So you're not putting ARSB on a fraud alert after one bad game?
No, because this team, they want to run, the Moff, the middle of the field. They just want to hammer the Moff. They threw to the Moff more than any team in the league last week. So that'll continue.
The Mothman. By the way, the 23 yards in week one for Amon-Ra St. Brown, I believe I remember that correctly. 13, would have been his fewest yards in any 2023 performance.
Yeah, so, it was not good.
Just saying, fraud alert.
I think overall, his ceiling has been very much capped with Jameson Williams' emergence here.
Which DEFCON is the lowest one? Is it 1 or 5? How does the system work? Because this would be like FraudCon 1. He's on the radar, right? Because the fact that JMO is emerging as, Denny said this summer, like sometimes things just click for a guy, and he's had such a stilted start to his career that it would make sense that it didn't click yet, and it could now, his first real off season. And like progression for a lot of guys is non-linear. If he just goes through the moon this year because he was an extremely talented prospect, it becomes a little concerning for Amon-Ra, a little bit.
There's a Denny Carter maxim where if you're a good quarterback prospect, you're Mahomes. Don't overthink it. A new maxim, you have one bad game, you're a fraud. It's pretty
right, yeah. Producer Adam says DEFCON 5 is the lowest level of readiness for the.
I knew it didn't. I knew 5 was 5 sounds like the scary one, but it's actually the lower level. I knew
FraudCon 5.
So what I'm saying is Trevor Lawrence is FraudCon 2. It's okay.
Oh my
Let's be real
God.
about that.
Trevor Lawrence, 12 completions in week 1. We'll get to that in just a minute, though. Kyle, Demont versus Jahmyr Gibbs, round 1 of a 17-round heavyweight fight. What did we see in week 1?
I guess if you want to declare a winner of the round, I'd give it to Gibbs. We still saw a pretty general split that we'd expect, where he got more of the routes. He was extremely efficient as a pass catcher, which is something you pointed out, that he wasn't really that efficient as a rookie. I believe he was up in that 1.8, 1.9 yards per out run range. It's a small sample, but it's an improvement in his week 1. They also split inside the 5 carries, 1 apiece. We'll see if that holds. Demon ended up getting 16 carries. He's still heavily involved, but this team wants to run the ball, is good at running the ball, and Jahmyr Gibbs maybe is taking a step forward as a pass catcher. He was truly an elite pass catching prospect, not just good, but like one of the more special pass catching prospects we've seen. So I'll give a slight win to Gibbs round 1, though I actually think this was just kind of a win for both of them. The offense looks really good. I think having an extra deep element, if JMO takes a step, is going to be good for the running game. Overall, both win, but I guess Gibbs slightly more win.
Well, if I'm a Gibbs guy, I don't love the fact that like Demont basically called game and overtime, just like give me the ball, and like he ended the game single-handedly. That
makes sense, though. It makes sense. You give it to the big body back.
He's a good physical runner. Like that's
the Rams line is soft now too. Apparently,
I really do. I think like the Ram. We have to note this just for matchup purposes. The Rams defense is just complete. If you want to talk about fraudulent, they're a disaster on the back end and against the run. It's going to force, I'm telling you, 20 targets for Cooper Kupp is going to be a thing like every week.
Because Denny, the Rams defense, at least in fantasy, was never a good fantasy defense even last year with Aaron Donald. Without Aaron Donald, it could get scary very quickly. Denny, the Bucs offense, so they lost Dave Canales, who we gave all the credit for their renaissance last year. Liam Cohen, the new guy, they picked up right where they left off last year somehow against a not good Commanders defense, but early takeaways for the Bucs offense. They're not going to miss a beat when we thought that they couldn't repeat their 2023.
All right, here's my spiel on the Bucs offense. 2% over expected on the drop back rate against Washington. Baker Mayfield led the NFL in completion rate over expected. Lots of checkdowns as evidenced by the 4.7 air yards per attempt from Baker, which is really, really low. Baker has long destroyed zone defenses, and that's what Washington primarily plays. The Lions are one of the most man-heavy coverage teams in the NFL. They were the second highest in week 1 against the Rams. So this means Mike Evans. This does not mean so much Chris Godwin. Mike Evans last year versus Detroit led the team with eight catches on 14 targets for 77 yards and a touchdown in the postseason. And so they met twice last year, the Lions and Bucs. The Bucs were 11% over their expected pass rate in the first one and 13% over in the second one. So these guys are going to cook through the air, and Mike Evans just eats man coverage alive. It's happening.
And I had no memory whatsoever of that Bucs-Lions divisional game. Or Denny, I thought you were misspeaking at first. Like, why is Denny doing Lions-Rams stats from the wild card round? And I was like, wait a minute, did they play?
Lions, and the Bucs gave him a scare. Yeah,
they did. They gave them a scare. Maybe because the Lions, listen, just like Brock Purdy, one of these days the Lions are going to be revealed to not actually be good.
Well, the problem is everyone in the NFC, they're all frauds. All the good teams in the AFC, all the superstar quarterbacks that are in the AFC. It's just a bunch of frauds hanging out until Patrick Mahomes dusts them.
Can you please let the Motor City have one thing?
Just give it 4 more years, and then it's going to be revealed that they weren't good after. After they made 3 of 4 NFC championship games. Guess what? They were never good. The Lions looking like another source of fantasy goodness. Kyle, what about Bucky Irving looking like a source of fantasy goodness? Because the numbers were heavily garbage time inflated, but he came in there and was immediately a better runner than Rachaad White. The thesis of the Bucky Irving play, you can maybe see it coming into reality, coming into fruition in real time. Or do we still just have to call this a late game fluke and not get on the Bucky train just yet?
Yeah, it was fluky in a few different ways. I believe 4 of his 9 carries came in the fourth quarter, which 5 in the first 3 is basic backup duties. All 3 of his targets came in the first 3 quarters, so at least the backup is more viable, but he's still strictly a backup. And the incredible rushing line in terms of yards per carry of, I believe it was 9 for 62, which is 6.9 yards per carry. It was blocked pretty well. And I mean, so our former coworker Hayden Winks posts tweets something about like, yeah, I guess if Bucky Irving just gets 53 yards before contact every game, he's going to look great. I was like, what a dork. Can I have some fun? And then he posted the clip of the tape, and I was like, hey, he's right. That was really well blocked. And I'm like, well, we have the stats. I can fact check Hayden on this. I'm gonna gotcha journalism, Hayden. And Bucky Irving, 6.9 yards per carry, a negative rush yards over expected.
Oh,
Hayden,
stop.
both
the
via the film.
The computer needs to log off on that one, man.
No. I'm telling you, you got to go find these carries. These were, I mean, you can drive a truck through the hole and then keep it going at 60 for a quarter of a mile. Like,
wow.
It was extremely well blocked, and Bucky got what was, he saw the wide open hole and got what was expected.
Yeah, how dare Bucky get what's blocked?
Well, the thing is, he didn't get what was blocked according to Next Gen on some other stuff. So I will note though, it was a perfectly like at expectation game. He averaged, negative 0.333 or whatever, rush yards over expected. Rachaad White was once again one of the worst running backs in all the advanced metrics. So although Bucky didn't prove to be extremely talented like his yards per carry suggests, Rachaad White did prove to be not a good runner between the tackles. So there is that.
The thing I kind of liked about Bucky, so it's garbage time. Garbage time is a little different for a runner because the Commanders knew the Bucs were just going to try to run and drain the clock, and he was still having success. So I found that aspect a little interesting. But Kyle and Hayden make a good point. The Indianapolis Colts arrive in Green Bay, Wisconsin as 3-point favorites. You may be wondering how that's the case. The Packers are really good. They have Jordan Love, except they don't. This week, even though they're claiming he might play. Please stop. Give it a rest, man. Packers already on the brink. Kyle, how over would it be for the Packers with Malik Willis under center, who, again, we had our doubts about Malik's passing ability. All he had to do in Brazil was throw a Hail Mary, and instead he ran around and got sacked. How devastating would this Malik Willis's presence be for this really talented Packers receiver core?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe Jaden Reed can survive off of scheme touches. And by survive, I mean be disappointing, but still make your flex. I don't really see how you play any other pass catcher. And even then, it's a tough spot to be in for Reed. Malik Willis, since entering the NFL, has a 14.1% career sack rate. These are low sample sizes, but maybe there's a reason he doesn't have a big sample of snaps under his belt so far. That would be the second worst since he entered the NFL. And a 33% pressure to sack rate, second worst since he entered the NFL. He takes a lot of sacks, and when he gets pressured, he continues to take sacks. He walks into pressure, doesn't diagnose it very well. So much so that, like you said, Hail Mary, like the one primary function of the play is just quickly chuck. You just got to get it downfield. The entire game is on the line, and he still just can't even attempt a pass. Like, that's the entire thesis of why he failed as a quarterback in Tennessee, summarized perfectly in one play. I think this will be an Arthur Smith level of run-heavy approach, which good for Josh Jacobs, but at the same time, they're not getting near the goal line very often. So it's a give-and-take situation with Jacobs and just a take situation from the fantasy point totals of the receivers.
I mean, would we put a super hobble Jordan Love even be good, by the way? Or
I mean, it'd be better
almost
than this.
I think it would be too.
You're right. It would be more, or it would be at least as conservative. That's even me being a pass heavy dork. I wouldn't pass almost at all with Jordan Love, but those passes would be okay. Some of them at least, they'd be better on one leg with Jordan Love than Malik Willis.
I think the takeaway from the Love positivity this week might be that there's an outside shot he plays in week 3. I have a very, very hard time believing he plays in week 2. Denny, what were the first week offensive takeaways for the Colts beyond Ant going, quote, psycho mode? I'm just reading what's here. I don't know who put that there.
By the way, if the Colts are on your waiver wire, pick them up.
Yes, the Colts defense against Malik Willis.
We love to stream against Malik Willis. So, all right, I included Anthony Richardson in my regression files piece.
What a hater.
As just a massive, medically dangerous level of coping.
Nerd. But, oh, the big guy throws far, and you're like, he can't keep throwing far. Let me tell you what, buddy.
Big guy can't continue to throw far. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
All right. Let me give you some haterade real quick on Richardson. Okay. All right. Richardson on throws from 0 to 19.
He knows this is just absurd. He knows it's over. When a man knows it's over.
Before Denny goes, you see the sky cam shot of the Anthony Richardson throw. Oh my God! It put it in the Mona Lisa. But go ahead, Denny, with your nerd stats.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, here's. Well, actually,
I said put in the Mona Lisa. I meant put in the Louvre. That's gonna get. Oh God, I feel so dumb.
We'll edit that after. Richardson on throws from 0 to 19 yards, 4 of 12. for 87 yards and touchdown, 1 pick,
Bust.
third lowest CPO completion rate over expected of any quarterback.
Third lowest cope, of course. Third lowest cope score.
Richardson led the league in uncatchable ball rate at 44%. 16.4 air yards per attempt. That is not the norm. You can't live with that. Okay. You just can't. I promise. The Colts are 10% below expected on the drop back rate. 42% target share for Michael Pittman. Who cares? 40% means nothing in this offense. So this offense stinks for fantasy beyond Anthony Richardson. That's what
I talked about this with Pat. I do think the one thing on the passing volume is, what crushes your passing volume? Whenever in one play you can cut out an entire drive with a touchdown. You're gonna throw less often if you can eclipse 50 yards in one play 3 times in one game. So I think, to your point, Denny, he's not throwing for 50 yards on 3 attempts, like 3 specific attempts, 3 individual times on 19 attempts. But as his efficiency in terms of yards per pass attempt, yard per completion comes down, the play volume will go up, which is the bright side for Michael Pittman. I think we kind of all agree that Michael Pittman's role in this offense is not as good as it was when Gardner Minshew was checking down. But to give the Pittman drafters some credit, we should just see more pass attempts going forward.
I'm worried about Pittman for obvious reasons. Even like a regression to like a more normal number of pass attempts, like it's not just me, Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell are going to be like Shaq Kobeing the long attempts. As Michael Pittman's like, please, my family is starving. I need another 4 air yards
one time. And Josh Downs coming back is a problem. I mean, I feel like with Pittman, it's going to be a lot of pain for the Pittman drafters.
The Downs thing too, something I'm really glad you slipped in there because he's facing threats on all fronts. Looking to rebound from the most disappointing loss of week 1, the Cincinnati Bengals take to the road to visit the 2-time defending champion Kansas City Chiefs, who are not at all living rent-free in the Bengals' heads, Denny. Chaos continues to reign in the Bengals skill core with T. Higgins yet to resume practicing. Apparently he was rehabbing on Thursday, though. Was there anything positive in the underlying data heading into a forbidding matchup with the Chiefs' elite defense?
It's the same old offense for Cincinnati. Burrow had 5.5 air yards per attempt, one of the lowest, 27th out of 32 qualifying quarterbacks in week 1. Jamar Chase had an ADOT of 6.2, which is very, very low. Kansas City plays a lot of 2 high safeties, so a lot of checkdowns in this game. Andre Yoshivas tied Chase for the team lead in targets and led the team in air yards with T. Higgins out. It's the same old deal. Like the Bengals don't try deep shots. They don't really get Jamar Chase involved in the short passing game as much as I think they should.
No, this guy needs 15 targets a game. I just don't.
This shapes up. Honestly, I know this sounds crazy. Bengals, Chiefs, whatever. Unless it's on NBC, this shapes up as a terrible game.
No, brother, you better believe it's Jim Nantz and Tony Romo.
Oh yeah, no, it's just boring. It's just boring stuff between these 2 teams. I mean, look, Mahomes is still a game manager, by the way. That's not changed.
Get out of it. Stop. You're lucky I didn't give you the Chiefs for this one. Romo's gonna have to be screaming a lot to keep this game interesting. It sounds like though. Kyle, Zach Moss versus Chase Brown. Again, round 1 of what could be an ongoing heavyweight fight in the backfield.
I mean, obviously a knockout implies that the fight is over, which is not, but if you could do a knockout blow, it would look like this. Zach Moss just clearly played ahead of him, saw 3 times as many carries, ran more routes, and saw more targets. He got the only goal line look. One thing I will know is Zach Moss, he played like as sort of the primary passing downs back. He was just ahead of him in all fronts. 2 horrific doinks right off of his hands drops. One of them was somewhat close. I was actually watching the film on this one to a classic doinks off of your hands into an interception. I was really hoping that was going to happen. So maybe don't play him on passing downs. I think it's perfectly fine if he is their primary between the tackles, first and second down guy. And he is obviously that and more right now. I do think as the offense moves forward, he didn't play great. He played horrific on passing down. So there's still some juice for Chase Brown to be an electric hit 22 miles an hour on that one screen where you get to run 60 yards type of player.
Well, Kyle, it might have also been like that was like as nightmare game script to be. be, this nightmare game script can be for a team like the Bengals. Like, dude, we're trailing to the Patriots. Like, we got to do something. Like, and they're panicking. Maybe they're not just playing the younger back. And that is the season. They ease into the season. They actually have a lead occasionally. They won't have a lead ever in Kansas City, but when they actually occasionally have a lead, they might be able to use Chase Brown.
Sure.
So we'll see what happens. Yeah. Uncertain after week one there. Denny, also uncertain can Xavier Worthy do stuff other than just like run really fast? Really, really cool week one where he did a lot of cool stuff. Didn't draw a lot of overall targets though. What was the underlying usage behind Xavier Worthy's cool plays?
I mean, he ran a lot of routes, 80% plus participation rate, which is nice. Marquise Brown, I guess, is not going to play, so that should remain. But I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, and I have a lot of exposure to Worthy in all formats, he totally got away with it. 11% target share against the Ravens. He was targeted on just 12% of his routes against Baltimore. Like, that's really, really low. 3 targets. One of them was a downfield shot that he caught on unbroken coverage. I watched film too, Kyle, and scored a second touchdown. Rasheed Rice is the story. Rasheed Rice targeted on 38% of his routes against Baltimore. Dominating. Shoot, I'm really sorry. Dominating the. I'm sorry. I thought
that was actually me calling to tell you. Oh, crazy how Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in my lifetime, with the fastest player in the NFL, with one of the more creative offensive minds running the headset. Got away with it. Crazy how that happens. I do love the call out. Rasheed Rice is like a top 6 fantasy receiver.
Yeah, that might be conservative.
Number 1. Yeah,
and honestly, his involvement in like the intermediate areas. Not good for Kelsey, this is a Rasheed Rice offense right now.
I think so.
Denny, what do you need to be reminded of all the time?
Picking my daughter up from the bus, and
guess what? Daddy's busy.
So before the show, I thought I actually stopped that alarm, but I apparently I didn't.
No,
I gotta say, I do think it's a good alarm to have if you're gonna forget it.
yeah.
Oh, I have to know what time.
Come on, she's fine. She knows how to walk. What, you don't know how to use your legs?
She can walk.
She can walk. Tell you who didn't do much walking or running or anything in week one was Samaje Perine. He let Isaiah Pacheco reach 80% of the Chiefs' offensive snaps, which is the second time in his career. So again, the victory lap bros were like, Samaje Perine was never, ever a worry at all. Everything's totally fine. One game is all I needed to see. Is that the case, or do we have any Perine optimism or Pacheco doomerism, as Samaje has 10 more days to learn the Chiefs system heading into week 2? Who wants to field this one? And I didn't assign it.
I mean, I'll take it. It's because there's not like a ton of data to work with. It's just vibes based. They had to like paratrooper him into the stadium because that's how late he was getting to the game. I mean, you just can't read much into a guy joining the team a few days before the season. And as you said, now they get a longer stretch to get him involved and just take any confident takeaways from that. Of course, it was a really good showing from Pacheco in terms of usage, but I don't think you can just make any sweeping statements until we see another week or two of Perine usage.
Yeah, Samaje, we'll just see. So the Kyron stuff struck me as very early, the victory lapping on Kyron, and then the Pacheco victory laps struck me as very early.
Real quick on Pacheco, Ramondre Stevenson ran wild, led the league in yards before contact per rush. So Pacheco, this is a Pacheco game. It has him written all over it. I think that he could see like 20 carries and go ballistic here.
Pacheco ranked very highly this week. We will be right back after this. It's a matchup between two of the brightest young quarterbacks in week 2 on Sunday Night Football. Watch Caleb Williams and the Bears face off with CJ Stroud and the Texans in Houston. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock, and of course, NBC Universo. I'm really hoping these games are still on NBC Universo. If we've lost the Spanish language rights to Sunday Night Football, that's very bad because I'm telling a lie.
Yeah. You really do love throwing that in there.
I do. I love to keep people on their toes. Tell you, didn't keep anyone on their toes in week 1 was Aaron Rodgers. He wasn't really doing a whole lot. Fresh off their shellacking at the hands of the 49ers, the Jets remain on the road to take on the Titans in Nashville, Tennessee. Kyle, the box score did not display a competitive Jets offense in week 1. Does the underlying data say anything different?
It probably wasn't as bad as watching it felt. I watched this whole game. It was like I wanted a victory lap, not drafting a lot of Rodgers, but it wasn't terrible. I mean, especially when you get to compare him to Kirk Cousins, both of them coming off of roughly the same injury. Rodgers gets a few months, in terms of recovery time back versus Kirk Cousins, but Cousins just did not look physically like he should have been out there. And Rodgers didn't look bad in terms of like, oh, he can't throw off of his
wasn't
back
his
foot.
plant foot though. Rodgers, it was his non-plant foot, which I guess makes a big difference apparently.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of the point is that like, I guess, when it's literally not the foot you have to drive off of, doesn't look as bad coming back from that. And he got more time to recover as well. His recovery is longer by like two months, roughly, maybe a little less than that. But so like looked physically like he was all there, and the advanced numbers weren't bad. He was graded fairly well by PFF in terms of passing grade. I believe he was top 15 in EPA per play as well. So, I mean, they didn't put up a lot of points, but it was a tough defense. His first game back, I'd feel better going. I feel a lot better going into this game.
Would have felt a lot better if Alan Lazard was not so heavily involved. And if their best play was not a free play where the 49ers defense was unclear if the play was still going.
I mean, that's been Rodgers' best play for a decade, though.
It has. They said he's had 18 free play touchdowns since his first year starter in 2008, and the second most is 6, Joe Flacco.
Oh,
it's like other quarterbacks don't even know this is allowed.
I know.
I mean, we have to remember that this is still a Nathaniel Hackett offense, and it's just gonna be choppy and it's gonna be slow. And I guess sometimes Garrett Wilson's gonna get away with it just based on massive volume. But honestly, there wasn't a whole lot of positives to draw from week 1 for the Jets. I mean, Rodgers, I did say on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, that Rodgers is dust, and that's probably overstating it.
That's definitely overstating
because he the nerdy metrics say that he was fine, not great, but he was fine.
Yeah.
And he still has a lively arm. You can't say that about Cousins. So, but I'm not looking forward to this Jets offense. I feel like Garrett Wilson's going to be down pretty bad.
Well, just similar to Kirk Cousins and the Falcons. People weren't really pretending like the Jets skill core was amazing. But I feel like maybe there was not enough focus on just how not good it is. And kind of like the Falcons, it's very top heavy. You have 2, not just stars, but fantasy stars at the top of the Jets offense, which can warp our perception. Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson are probably very good in real life too, but they're fantasy superstars. Beyond that, it's like, Conk Daddy, am I right? Please don't leave me, my wife.
He's leaving.
Conk Daddy. Xavier Gibson, 0 catches week 1. I mean, Alan Lazard is truly heavily involved. It could be
super heavily. He's not. I don't think he's going anywhere.
I feel like it had the beginnings of a nightmare. We'll just see though. We shall see. Speaking of a nightmare, with the Titans week 1, Denny Carter, Will Levis. Truly had one of the worst quarterback performances I've ever seen. Probably had the worst throw I've ever seen, where he just pitched an interception to the Bears. A game-changing interception. What did the Titans actually do in week 1?
Right.
Data tell a story about this Tennessee Titans offense.
It does. And folks, we are hitting the fraud con button on this Titans offense. Nothing has been more fraudulent in my lifetime.
Yikes.
The Titans in week 1, 12% under their expected pass rate on first down. Yeah. Okay, that's fraud. Yeah, I don't have to see anything else. That's a fraudulent team. They're not trying to win. You're not trying to win when you do that. No. So let me just give you some other horrible stats about the offense. Overall, they weren't so run heavy, but on first down they were. But that's a loser. That's a loser stat there. Levis was 7th best in completion rate over expected, which we are looking into the computers and what they're saying.
So the computers are down horrific.
Listen, 20 of his 28 passes came within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage, which is very different than last year. He also had 4 rushes for 36 yards. Okay, so
he sacrificed his life on all 4 of them.
Yeah. We have. I mean, it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time until he gets hurt or gets benched or both. And, so we're just waiting. We're just running down the clock here.
Wow.
But I do think, DeAndre Hopkins is apparently getting healthier. I don't think he's all the way back. Calvin Ridley was an air yard superstar in week 1, so don't give up on him quite yet.
Denny, man, he was wide open for a long touchdown. And then supposedly humongous armed Will Levis disastrously threw it.
I don't understand that. He has like the second strongest arm in the league and he couldn't get it there.
Probably shoddy mechanics or something.
I guess. But Calvin Ridley, I believe he will be fine. again, this offense, I just feel like it doesn't have an identity. Levis doesn't know what he's doing. It's pretty bad.
Part of the identity, Kyle, though, was Tony Pollard taking the lead clearly ahead of Tyjae Spears. Maybe this because he's the more experienced inside runner, and they were trying to protect a 17-0 lead, but they did not protect that 17-0 lead. Do you think Tony Pollard is as far ahead of Tyjae Spears as it would appear from the week 1 box score, or is another situation where we cannot take a victory lap yet if you were a Tony Pollard bro?
Yeah, this is the one I feel roughly most confident in not taking a victory lap yet. As you pointed out, Pollard outcarried Spears 16-4, like a clean dusting of him, but they both saw 4 targets. Spears ended up running more routes and was on the field for 44% of Tennessee's snaps. And then I think Monday or Tuesday, Brian Callahan immediately talking about how they need to get Spears more involved. All of this points to me that, both the snaps, the routes, and the comments from Brian Callahan is we'll see more of Spears. I do not think he is going to challenge for the backfield lead unless Pollard starts to continue to look worn down, but he actually looked pretty solid in this game compared to what we got from him previously. So, yeah, I still think it's 1A, 1C. I'm not even going to call him 1A, 1B, but I do think Pollard, Pollard is a pretty big lead, but I think Spears, if the offense can get something together, which I don't know if that's the case, as we've talked about, Will Levis might not be it. I think we have to kind of start zeroing in on the fact that he's probably not very good, but if the offense was just league average, I think Spears would be fantasy viable. Not a great pick, but a fantasy viable pick going forward in terms of just overall share of the touches.
The Titans are just another illustration. A point our listeners know, we have a savvy audience, but it's not just that it's 1 game sample sizes. A lot of times it's like a sample. It's like it's a sample size that's like not even representative because like something totally crazy happened in the game. So it's not even like it's one pattern that's going to probably generally repeat itself. This pattern,
we can say like, if the game looks like this one going forward, no game will look like this one going forward.
More so for some teams than others too. And like the Titans had one of the craziest game scripts you'll ever see in week 1. So too early to fly the mission accomplished banner. The San Francisco 49ers head on the road to Minneapolis, Minnesota, or maybe it's St. Paul. I don't know. After dump trucking the Jets in week 1, Denny Carter, the Vikings offense certainly looked promising in week 1, but barely had to try against the non-competitive New York Giants. What did you see that you liked from Sam Darnold and company? You were telling anyone who listened to Sam Darnold is actually good. For 1 week, you were right.
Hold on. I would like to submit to the court. Denny knows. I see him. He knows. At like 12:55, right as the DFS contests are about to lock, he texts me, all right, it's over for Darnold. Jam the Giants defense.
Very
curious. Denny's saying one thing in public and in private, putting his money somewhere very different.
I don't know what I was doing.
I know, man. We all get, doesn't matter how long you've been in the industry or how much of an expert you get tilt brain.
I was hedging hard at the last second because I was like, oh God, he's going to be so bad. And then he was really good.
It's really good. Not for fantasy though, because they didn't have to try. They didn't have to do anything the entire second half.
All right. But I mean, I think it portends good things for Justin Jefferson and the rest of these pass catchers. Vikings offense in week 1, 7th highest early down pass rate, 4% over expected drop back rate, which is, that's a Kevin O'Connell thing. So that's good. Darnold had 7th best adjusted net yards per attempt, which is just a really good metric in like measuring overall efficiency on throws.
It's a metric that really makes sense to me when I hear it.
Yeah, I know. He was sacked once on 10 pressures, which is I think a good thing. Considering his pressure to sack rate has traditionally been pretty high. And he knew the mission or the, what did the Zoomers say? He knew the assignment. Okay. 25% target share for Justin Jefferson, 33% air yard share. And really they just took the air out of the ball in the second half. So I think that Jefferson is looking at that sort of Megatron. I think Kyle said it last week, kind of a Megatron Stafford era sort of season.
You know who else knew the assignment, by the way? I just finished rewatching the Jason Bourne trilogy, and boy, did that guy know the assignment.
Oh, he knew. The assignment was known.
Some of the greatest American films ever made. Kyle, just a bad week 1 matchup for Brandon Ayuk, ?
Yeah, I mean, he almost got there. He had a really well-thrown ball from Purdy in the back of the end zone. He had to lay out for it, but it's a catch you expect to $240 million receiver or whatever they're paying him to make, and he doesn't come down with it. And it wasn't his only end zone target not caught in this game. It is a tough matchup versus the Jets defense with Sauce Gardner. He was coming into the team, or at least he was at practice, but he wasn't practicing. So coming into the offensive fold extremely late in the offseason. And I think maybe there's some data to back that up because he was third on the team in first read targets, both Kittle and Debo ahead of him. So if you don't have Brandon Ayuk around to tell him what the plays are, maybe you scheme up more stuff for Kittle and more stuff for Debo.
Shanny just overthinking this stuff, man. How long has he been in your system? You're seriously going to pretend?
Well, I think the thing is, much like PFF Bobby, it worked. He smoked the Jets, so.
Whatever. I tell you who didn't smoke was Josh Norris in the Rotoworld Dynasty League. I needed one friggin' more yard. One more yard. Wait, literally one more yard.
Did you tie him, though? Did you end up
tying him? We tied. I need not mention, I also had CMC. So if Shanny could ever tell the truth, I would have won the matchup because I would have played Ty Chandler instead of Kyle Shanahan.
Great.
But I digress. Jordan Mason, RB1 season. I mean, yeah, clearly. I don't even need to ask this question. He's clear-cut RB1 for week 2.
Yeah.
And CMC. Spent a lot of time thinking he was good, but apparently it doesn't matter at all. Just as good as Jordan Mason.
Say, I don't know. Is it possible Jordan Mason is a little bit game script dependent?
Oh, yeah. Jordan Mason, I think, had his best game in week 1. I'll say.
Yeah,
I mean, but he's not going to
game.
Yeah, he's not going to be out there catching 6 balls if the Niners fall behind here. That's
no, and they will play the passing snaps. He got 60.
They were desperately involving Juszczyk. I'll say that. I was like, dude, I was seriously screaming at my TV, get this guy off the friggin' field and throw to George Kittle. Like, get Kyle Juszczyk off my television.
Did you have some sort of ulterior motive, though, other than the success of the 49ers?
No.
I'm pretty sure the Kittle plays work, or the Juszczyk plays worked very well. So
they always do.
They always do, man. It's the biggest scam I've ever seen in my entire life. The Saints and Cowboys author 2 of week 1's more convincing victories. They now meet up in Dallas, Texas, with the boys. Actually, it's Arlington. With the boys operating as comfortable favorites. Kyle, we joked about the Saints hiring a dime store Shanahan, but it is already looking like it was maybe easily enough to turn around this offense. Or was it one game sample size against a truly, truly atrocious Panthers team on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, they're not throwing 3 touchdowns per half because they took the gas off in the second half, took the foot off the gas in the second half. They're not averaging 3 touchdowns per competitive half and 47 points per game going forward, but they checked all of the nerd 10,000-foot view boxes in that. I see in my notes here, I literally wrote hell yeah, brother, which is a pretty good note if I'm being honest. They were first in the NFL in pre-snap motion on passing plays. They were third in the NFL in play action rate. And we even saw like trickling down to someone like Alvin Kamara, who ran his routes from the slot at the highest rate he had in a game since Sean Payton was the head coach. So they're being more creative with their players. They're being more creative with their play design. And it, proof is in the pudding. They smoked a bad team, but they buried them. So I do expect them to be a good offense. They won't be as good as they were last week, but no one's expecting that.
I mean, horrible team, but that was a statement victory by the New Orleans Saints. And that maybe for the first time ever, Derek Carr will lead an offense that's greater than the sum of its parts. We'll just see. That was very, very intriguing, Denny. That does include Alvin Kamara. Kyle alluded to it. Does he continue to get away with it? Because Jamal Williams ain't it. He took a lot of the ball a lot. So did Taysom Hill, which we're talking about not
right.
Does Kamara continue to get away with it, Denny, in this new look Saints offense?
I think it's more than that. I think that they're actually using him correctly. They're not just hammering him into the line like the pre-Clint Kubiak Saints were. 15 rushes, 5 catches on 5 targets in week 1. And again, Jamal Williams was brought in the fourth quarter, basically to kill the clock. 11 carries for him. You had Mims,
Jordan Mims.
Yeah, he got a few touches.
Too early to be making up, guys.
So just in this matchup against Dallas, Cowboys play a lot of 2 high safeties. That probably means check down season for Derek Carr. We know how much he loves that. I will say that Carolina had the 3rd lowest rate of 2 high safeties in week 1. And
just a well-coached team.
Carr took advantage of that, as we saw with hitting Rashid Shaheed deep for an early touchdown. I don't think that opportunity is going to present itself this week. So I could see a lot more checkdowns, and Kamara is Mr. Checkdown.
It would be kind of funny if Derek Carr just instantly gets exposed by the Cowboys after
He
one
could.
game. He could. We'll see. The Cowboys defense looked all the way back in week 1, but it was not the most challenging opponent.
Yeah, you have to consider the opponent, man. That dysfunction on the Cleveland side is hard to like measure in numbers, honestly.
Yeah.
We finally got new data in the Cowboys backfield, Kyle. Did it really tell us anything useful? Because again, the game script was so weird in Cowboys Browns. Zeke appeared to be clearly ahead of Rico Dowdle. Is the update as simple as that after one game in the Cowboys backfield, or is it still to be determined on how this is actually going to shake out?
Yeah, I mean, it's another game where, the Browns were inept. They could not put together a real offensive drive. I think they had a late score, but it ultimately was a game that was over. Not every game's going to look like that. Very few of your opponents are as bad as the Cleveland Browns, frankly. So in that context, I don't want to extrapolate too much. Zeke only saw 2 more carries and 1 more target than Rico. And I think the thesis of the Rico play was always that, oh yeah, this extremely old wash running back will start week 1. Is he the starter in week 12, 14, your fantasy championship? I'm still going to bet against that. But I think unless we get the data to change that says Zeke is the backup, until that day comes, you can at least start him as an RB3. This is a really good offense, and he's going to get the first crack at goal line work. He's going to get the first crack at the first carry of the game. So they're both viable. I do think I'll be ranking Zeke slightly ahead, but it won't last. It was my prediction.
Well, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott has the touchdown upside here. I mean,
Does he?
If they have the ball at the 1, they're not giving it to Dowdle.
If one of the 99 yards on the field is where the ball is, then Zeke is good. Any other of the other yards is, you don't want to have Zeke out there. It's a Rico time.
Zeke at the 3 equals Rico season, man.
Yeah.
We'll see. Even that, I feel like it's a little too early to say, just to be honest. Our guy's gassed.
Really?
Our guy's gassed, man. It's over.
He saw the only green zone touch in that backfield. Dowdle's not coming in.
That's a large sample size.
It's huge. It's that there's no bigger thing.
No, you are right about this part. He'll have it for now. He's gonna have to lose.
I agree.
Rico's gonna have to take it.
If you tell me they have a goal line, a 1 yard, to the point. If you tell me they have a carry, I'll even say inside the 5. This coming week, I'll put my money, if you want to give me even money, on Zeke getting that carry.
Yes. Real quick, it appears the Cowboys' number 2 weapon, Jake Ferguson, is actually going to play through his knee injury. But anyone who intrigues you, say if he's at far less than 100%, or if he does not play, or any down ballot Cowboys that actually intrigue you, it's slim pickings in this core.
If Ferguson doesn't play, it would be Schoonmaker. Luke Schoonmaker would seem to be the next guy up, but him and the other dude, whose name I can't remember, kind of split routes after Ferguson left the game last week. So
it's not Peyton Hendershot, who's now on the Chiefs.
No, it's somebody I've never heard of.
Some guy who doesn't.
Yeah, Kyle's looking it up, I think.
You can see my face. I am.
Yeah. So, but I think Schumacher would be the favorite. I think the way that the New Orleans conducts their defense, I think this is like a clear, like massive target game for CeeDee Lamb.
You guys have never heard of Brevin Spann-Ford?
Spann-Ford.
Gosh.
He was like a rookie in the past 2 years.
Thought you guys
would go to West Virginia.
I blurbed him the other day, just so you guys know.
He went to Minnesota, by the way. The Eagles are back from Brazil as roughly a touchdown home favorites against the Atlanta Falcons. Denny Carter. The Falcons were a week 1 horror show, but the Eagles were not exactly convincing against the Packers. There were a lot of big plays in a sloppy game on a terrible field. Did you notice any initial trends, though, with Kellen Moore's new offense, like perhaps Saquon Barkley winning leagues in fantasy football? What did you see from Kellen in one game?
My coping over the Saquon thing is actually like frightening me at this point. I feel like it's just over. Like if you don't have Saquon, it just feels over. But I will say that, lots of the short of it is, the Cliff Notes version is Kellen Moore introduced pre-snap motion to the Eagles offense and moved the receivers around a little bit. And that was nice. And that works because A.J. Brown is insanely efficient when moved around the formation when put into pre-snap motion. So that works. But overall, Eagles offense, 50% pass rate in neutral situations versus Green Bay. They were 10% below their expected drop back rate in week 1. When they had the lead, guys, against the Packers, the Eagles passed at a 40% rate. So there was a major establishment going on here. I will say,
as someone who faded Saquon Barkley, they're not massive touchdown favorites this week, are they?
Saquon's scoring at least 2.
Yeah,
like that's pretty clear.
Well, what if they actually get the tush push revved?
8 red zone touches for Barkley, which is unsustainable, but I think just kind of shows you how much they want to get him the ball where it counts. One weird thing, I just want to mention this: Jalen Hurts, 13 rushes for 33 yards in that Packers game, right? That's crazy inefficient, and it actually is somewhat of a trend from last year.
He's lost his explosiveness, man. This injury.
I think what's my theory is this: he's not fast, okay, and they're treating him like he's Jaden Daniels, where they're having him sprint to the boundary, and basically every defender can catch him on that sort of play. But he's a big guy, we know this, and so that downhill running we don't really see anymore. But that's what they have to get back to, or it's just going to continue to be this like 10 rushes for 30 yards thing. It's just really bleak for fantasy.
The tush push looked totally over, as we all witnessed with our own eyes. But maybe they stuck with it. I don't think they're going to totally abandon it just yet. One thing I'll say about the super run heavy game script is the field had to be a factor. I mean, guys were just falling wantonly. Like you took one step, you fell. So it made sense to commit to the run game. But Saquon Barkley. So my reading the whole time, the Saquon Barkley signing, not an original reading, was they finally want to get rid of the backfield committees. Saquon Barkley played 80% of the snaps. There was no committee whatsoever in the Eagles backfield, at least for one game. Kyle, Denny gave us some grisly Falcons stats on Tuesday's podcast. Do you share a similarly dire outlook? I mean, one game, maybe Kirk, again, just learning to trust his surgically repaired leg. But yikes. They're one team where it seemed most easy to be like, yeah, we actually do need to panic about the Falcons. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because all I can go off is what I saw, because I think their extreme run heavy, plan was the immediate impact of Kirk just not looking like he can throw a football. And to both the avid film watcher and to the layman, you're like, yeah, if my quarterback looked like that, I'd run the football a lot too. They did some of the stuff we expected them. Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Kyle Pitts all ran 100% of the routes. It's very a McVay tree thing where he doesn't sub out his top players, doesn't give the defense a chance to sub out in that turn as well. And those guys get all of the routes. His tight ends are always, even if they're not that good, running all of the routes, which maybe has ended up being true for the Falcons. Maybe Kyle Pitts isn't that good, but he just runs all the routes. Doesn't matter if your quarterback can't throw and you don't let him throw very often. So I think this is if the offense gets its stuff together, which is kind of Kirk Cousins based, it'll look good. Do they get it together? I don't really know. And I don't have a lot of confidence in that.
No, we're panicking, folks. You're free to start running around and screaming about the Atlanta Falcons. You're also free. Denny had something on the tip of his tongue, but we'll never know what he was going to say. Oh, okay, we will.
Well, I think that the Falcons are going to have to make a move here at quarterback.
I do agree. It's panic season. And again, Denny, kind of wish we were talking on the phone earlier today. We had paid a little more attention with a very subtle sign that they were maybe losing faith already in Kirk Cousins when they used the number 8 overall pick on a quarterback. I kind of wish I'd read a little more.
I mean, that's what that was. You have to believe that they saw Cousins and they said, "Oh my God, what have we done? We have to get somebody who can play this year." I'm shocked. I'm shocked that Penix didn't start week 1.
I don't know. Yep, sunk costs. But by the way, speaking of sunk costs, is how much time we spent on these first 8 games. We're going to race through the final 7 when we return right after this. Dominate this NFL season with a Fantasy Life Plus subscription. Get weekly rankings, start sit advice, DFS analysis, and betting tools. Use promo code SEASON20 for 20% off. Go to fantasylife.com/rotoworld to learn more. The Washington Commanders and New York Giants are coming off a pair of non-competitive Week 1 losses, but the Commanders generated a little more hope in the process, Kyle Dvorchak. Let's just start there. Can Jaden Daniels sustain like this being barely having any success as a passer, but running a metric ton, or the rushing usage get locked down as the film and the book goes out to the rest of the league?
Yeah, I mean, I think Did the Bucs come into this thinking like, all right, pocket passer, let's lock up this guy's arm? They knew what they were getting into to some degree. Obviously, like the more you get film on him, the more you can dial in how much you need to prevent against his running versus his throwing. But it's not like him running was a surprise. The Bucs weren't caught flat-footed in terms of their preparation. I would assume they'd be a really bad team if that was the case. And in terms of his overall rushing usage, it was just him calling his own number when he got under pressure. He was pressured on 12 dropbacks. On half of them, he ran. He gained 60 yards. And I
love
believe
to
four
see
first.
it. You truly.
Yeah, I mean, this was the thesis, right? And I'll say to his credit as well, I think there were some things that were concerns coming out of college that we didn't see. He didn't scramble from a clean pocket, and his pressure to sack rate was actually really good. So if you can just get, anytime you're pressured, you get a free 11 yards and a first down to keep the chains moving, which isn't going to always be the case. He won't be that efficient. But if that's the style of football he's going to play, and it's going to generally be good because he is truly an incredible rushing talent, you don't need to be a particularly good passer. So I'd say in terms of rushing, he ran at the appropriate spots, and he killed it when he was running in those spots, obviously.
Sticking with the rushing real quick, what about Eckler versus B-Rob behind Mr. Jaden Daniels, who could lose all oxygen in this offense if the quarterback is, of course, doing that. But both looked fairly lively against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look great for Eckler, frankly. He got out-carried 12-2. He ran half the routes, but both of them saw 4 targets. There wasn't much goal line work for the running backs to go around. Jaden Daniels led the NFL in carries inside the 5, which is another great point in terms of rushing usage. It's going to happen. We're getting in QB1 season. But Brian Robinson was clearly the early downs back and was used in a passing role as well. It's about as nightmarish as it gets for Eckler. So
other than the fact that he looked pretty spry, he looked pretty good physically.
Cope.
Get him, Denny.
Cope.
Oh my gosh. Denny, speaking of Cope, there's none that can be had for the New York Giants. Any hope at all after watching this game 1 week? Team for 1 week.
Dude, you know what they're gonna do with the neighbors thing. They're gonna draw up 2 bubble screens for him to start this game against Washington, and then they're gonna forget about him. Like that's just the way this is gonna go. This is a Wan'Dale Robinson offense through and through.
Stop. Make him stop.
I mean, it's really bleak. I guess, maybe Daniel Jones, since he rushed 6 times, maybe he can get you there in like a 2 QB or super flex league. Because this Washington defense, and particularly the secondary, is that bad. Like that was not a fluke in week 1 against the Bucs. Like they're going to get torched on a weekly basis. So I do think that Daniel Jones has a little bit of appeal, maybe, but hopefully Neighbors gets involved. I think you're starting Devin Singletary. Look, if you're not going to start him here, you literally should just drop him.
Yes.
That's
not a joke. Yes. And it sets up well for Devin Singletary this week. It sets up very well for Drew Lock starting in 2 or 3 weeks. And abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Drafted Malik Neighbors. It's totally over. The Rams will be adjusting to life without Puka Nacua as narrow road underdogs in Arizona. Denny Carter. Kyron Williams went unchallenged as the Rams lead back in week 1, but it didn't amount to a whole lot in fantasy because of shoddy blocking and pass-friendly game script. How should Williams managers be feeling after they decisively won round 1 against Blake Corum, who may or may not have ever even gotten off the bus?
Yeah, I mean, Corum, not a thing. A lot of beat writers said otherwise, but we're looking into that.
Sean McVay did too. We break Blake. It's not just what he does; it's what he doesn't do. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't. Sure, he never gains any yards, but sorry, I can't keep that one going.
That's pretty good.
It was really good. I was going to say, it would physically be taxing for you to keep it going, so you cut it off.
I've destroyed my larynx, but it's fine.
It was worth it. So I here's the thing. When you think about the Rams from a zoomed out point of view, you're talking about a team, like we said, atrocious defense. They're going to bleed yards and bleed points all year long. That probably means that they're going to be chasing points all year long. And if Kyron Williams is running a good route rate like he did in week 1, then, you would think that he could be involved as a pass catcher. But game script could preclude that strong rushing role that we were hoping for, the folks were hoping for when they drafted him. I, of course, didn't even see him on the board, but, that I don't know if that's happening. I mean, but I think it's, obviously a good thing that Blake Corum was nowhere to be seen. That was a good thing for Kyler.
Weird stuff tends to happen in week 1. And I just had a hard time. We're getting another donut from Blake Corum in week 2. But yeah, it's it's not a bit. It's completely over right now for Blake Corum. We talked about MHJ slow ? To begin the show, Kyle. But just tell us about the weirdness in the Cardinals passing attack, where it was Greg Dortch commanding targets easily over Marvin Harrison Jr. in week 1. How alarming is this? What should fantasy managers be looking for going forward?
It was pretty alarming, to be fair. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say, as someone who thought Marvin was a fine pick at the 1-2 turn, which I don't think is probably going to look good in hindsight. But, I don't think it's the end of the world. Kyler went 1 of 7 on throws 10+ yards downfield, but had 2 drops and a handful of near misses where it just looked like the timing was a bit off. So, and I thought going into the season, this would be a very well-coached, sound, well-oiled machine kind of team, even if they played slow and they played balanced. We saw this last year's. They ultimately had a strong offense in terms of an EPA per play basis because I thought they were just a well-coached team, despite having a pretty, mediocre cast of pass catchers pre-Marvin Harrison. I think this is, for everyone but Dortch, probably a low watermark. I mean, it doesn't get much lower for Marvin Harrison, frankly. And we also saw Trey McBride schemed up a ton of targets. He was one of the highest first read target tight ends in week 1. And ended up catching, I think, four balls or something like that. But he was both targeted early, targeted often, and a integral part of the game plan. Just didn't manifest in fantasy points. So I do think better days are ahead, albeit the vibes, they're not great.
Not great at all. Kyler, MHJ, never heard of him. Again, check out Galaxy Brains.
Denny, Cardinals are going to establish so hard here, by the way.
Denny, 2 things. Give us some post-Puka Nacua quickly. Rams pass catcher facts. And what did Greg Rosenthal know, and when did he know it?
When did he know it? We're looking powerfully into it.
We are.
We have dispatched several investigators.
Not a joke. I mean, I was barely drafting Puka before. I drafted him 0 times after Greg in his podcast moment. But yeah, quick post-Puka pass catcher facts.
40% target share for Cooper Kupp, led to 22 targets in week 1. Just insane numbers. And that's obviously going to continue. Demarcus Robinson steps in as the wide receiver 2. Is he good? Does it matter? I don't know. Kobe
no
Parkinson.
And no. Not good, doesn't matter.
Kobe Parkinson, really good, really strong role for a tight end. Okay, look, we're scraping bottom at tight end,
sure,
and we're loving Kobe Parkinson. Okay, because they're going to have to throw a lot here. I think Parkinson's running a lot of routes, not seeing a ton of targets, but oh well. And so Nacua is a huge hole in this target share for the Rams. I think a guy like, I think Robinson primarily, but then also Parkinson will fill that hole.
Lost David Njoku to his high ankle sprain. I am starting Colby Parkinson.
Yeah, and you feel okay about it. I would.
I do feel okay about it. Smarting from a rough week 1 road loss to the Chiefs, the Ravens arrive home as massive favorites against the Raiders. Kyle, wasn't a big dog game script in week 1. I guess you can probably tell me this quickly. The big dog is going to eat against Vegas, right? He remained, by the way, one of the better rush yards over expect. It was Titans Derrick Henry to a T. 0 pass game involvement, surprisingly efficient for the next gen stats. He's going to eat, right?
Yeah, he averaged last year only 6 wins, but he averaged 19 half PPR points per game in his wins. And that was behind a bad offensive line when you did not have to prepare for the quarterback. I mean, a truly, very bad offensive line. You do have to prepare for the quarterback, both legs and arm, when you're facing the Ravens. He's a massive favorite. This is an absolute smash spot. I don't need to tell you that, but it's a good bounce back spot.
We all have talked about this endlessly in this week's podcast. Isaiah Likely versus Mark Andrews. Just quickly, can they both be tight end 1s? Isaiah Likely was, of course, the tight end 1 of week 1. There's some really, really high grade Mark Andrews cope going around, one of which is that he was frequently double teamed, bracketed. That does give hope for him going forward. Do you guys think they can both be tight end 1s?
I think so.
I mean, given the state of tight end 1, you had to score 10.2 PPR points last week to get easily into the tight end 1 range. So yes, but if they are both tight end 1s, it's because neither of them reached top 3 or 4 probably. I don't think you can field a tight end 7 and a tight end 4 probably. It's probably 9 and 10.
I think Isaiah Likely is a lot about that lack of receiver depth, didn't he?
I worry. Look, last week Ravens led the league with 80 offensive plays. That's not happening here. Okay. I mean, honestly, it could be like 50 this week for the Ravens. So that cuts off a lot of volume. Game script could get sideways in a hurry here. I think that the Ravens are just going to hammer the Raiders on the ground. So I think this week, I don't know if they can both be tight end ones, but overall, I think that they could possibly. Yeah.
Kyle, I know the best ball theory on Brock Bowers, especially explained to me by Patrick Crane, was, listen, don't ever think Bowers. He actually is a guy who's going to be easy for a coaching staff to use and to target, and that he's an easy button guy. They're not going to have to work to get him the ball, even though he doesn't have a position, blah, blah, blah. Certainly looked like the case in week one. How sustainable do you think that is? Man, Devontae Adams looking rough again, by the way, but just give us some real quick Brock Bowers facts after his really impressive week one.
Yeah, led the team in targets, tied with Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams in first read targets, but in his first NFL game, going bar for bar in terms of your team scheming you targets with Devontae Adams is a really strong indicator of his talent. And of course, midway through the season, Devontae Adams is getting traded to the Jets. So.
I was going to say, man, this guy is – we should honestly just change – like, you Google Devontae Adams Rotoworld, and we already have him on the Jets. Like, we get complaints about it. Like, listen, I know he's still on the Raiders right now, but be real. We're just saving ourselves work.
Yeah, I was about to say that too. Let's get ahead of the schedule a little bit. It's a busy season. I had some free time. Let me put him on. I'll say with Bowers, big miss from Denny, who was all on the Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison train because Malik Neighbors had an ADOT half a yard lower in his final season in college. To his credit, we do want layup touches. And to not say the PPR scam of all time, playing a position where 10 points makes you the tight end 2 is, drafted as a tight end 9 is a good pick. He seems like he's going to run the scam quite easily.
I'm sure Brock Bowers will stay healthy. After completely imploding in their season opener on the road in New Orleans, the Carolina Panthers return home to face mad scientist Jim Harbaugh. Denny. The Panthers are more morbidly fascinating than the Chargers are, but the Chargers are where the fantasy interest lies. Let's begin with that wide receiver core and Lad McConkey. Yeah. Denny and I may have trash talked Lad McConkey all summer.
And that was tough for week one. He scored a touchdown, of course, short touchdown against the Raiders. 32. He was targeted. I'll start again. Lad McConkey was targeted on 32% of his targets in week one, which is really strong. He ran a route from the slot 60% of the time. The Saints tormented the Panthers from the slot. So this is a Lad game. I mean, mostly it's just going to be the Chargers running 100 times, but McConkey's not a bad play.
Speaking of the Chargers running 100 times, Kyle, can J.K. Dobbins actually pull away from Gus Edwards, or is this still just a strict committee, true hot hand, where the Chargers, to their credit, didn't ever try to mislead us? They just listen, it's a hot hand thing. J.K. Dobbins got the hot hand in week one, looked a lot better than Gus Edwards, but is this just going to remain trading off carries?
Yeah, I don't know. Can J.K. Dobbins pull away from him? Could he pull away from the Raiders defense? It didn't seem like it. Boom. Roasted him.
Joe Mixon, 30 carries, 159 yards. He had a long run of 13. That's the J.K. Dobbins plan right there, right?
No, I mean, it's a great offensive line, and albeit I don't think he has the long speed anymore, if he is just hitting the holes that are blocked for him, it frankly doesn't matter. He will be that Joe Mixon. Like, you can chunk, and maybe you don't hit home runs like you used to. It's not going to matter. This is going to be a really well-designed running game that has the blockers to do it. And I still, despite him not having long speed, definitely think he's got more juice right now than Gus Edwards. They split carries last week almost evenly, maybe exactly evenly. I could see that starting to dissipate. And I think if Gus Edwards is phased out entirely and we see a little bit of Kamani Vidal later in the season and then more J.K. Dobbins as well, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Panthers next week, by the way. Panthers, bad. The Jaguars choked away what would have been a big week one victory. Now they're field goal home favorites somehow against the Cleveland Browns. Browns down, absolutely horrific. Kyle, tell us how good the Jags news. Tell us the good Jags news heading into this awful matchup. Is Brian Thomas for real? Is Christian Kirk cooked? Denny, I'm going to ask you not about the Christian Kirk, by the way. I'm asking Kyle instead.
Yeah, good thing I prepared for this one. I'm sure of it. No, I actually did. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too carried away. It was 4 for 47 and a touchdown from Brian Thomas. It was a good performance. It wasn't like he came out and set the world on fire, but he was graded as a top 20 pass catcher in terms of yards per route run and PFF receiving grade. He got a near full route share. It was high 70s, I believe, and got a little bit of work in 12 personnel as well. He wasn't the guy they subbed off. Those are all really strong indicators from an NFL player in his first game. And he passed the eye test too. So I don't think it's over for Kirk. I do think it's going to be a relatively flat distribution to start the season. But the fact that Brian Thomas forced a flat distribution as the downfield touchdown scoring threat in his first NFL game feels really good about the long-term play for him.
Feeling really, really good about Brian Thomas. Yeah, who we were feeling good about in August, to be fair. Guy who might just hit the ground running. What do you guys, Denny or Kyle, I'll start with Denny. Are we clinging to anything with the Browns? Any positive takeaways from week one?
Yeah.
J-Mo, Jabu, get him in there.
Yes, we do
Oh,
need
the other J-Mo.
we do need Jameis Winston under
The
center,
OG
obviously.
J-Mo.
I mentioned on Tuesday's show that, the Browns were actually ran the most offensive plays last year, and in week one they ran the third most, 70 plus. That seems to be a thing, and that creates a really good positive offensive environment. Amari Cooper, who I put in the regression files as the cover guy, led the league in air yards. It's going to hit, folks. You just wait, just be patient, please. I'm begging you to be patient with Amari Cooper. Jerome Ford is a scam.
Jerome Ford's usage was very, very good.
It was 18 touches, 6 catches. So I do think there's something here, and as soon as they get Deshaun Watson out, and it will happen, as soon as Watson's out, they could cook, I think.
Cooper had a long touchdown drop too, as well. Yes. I believe
he's never done that before.
I know.
9 targets for Amari Cooper, and now David Njoku out with a high ankle sprain. Amari Cooper is just he's always going to be living on that wide receiver 2-3 borderline, but he's just going to get it done. And Jordan Akins, right? Kind of like Jordan Akins is a streamer.
He can shoot step in. Yeah,
he's a good streamer because he's got big play upside. The Pittsburgh Steelers and Denver Broncos are playing a football game. We're really excited about Denny Carter. Javonte Williams was part of the Broncos' week 1 implosion. Utterly atrocious performance. I think 8 carries for 21 yards. How concerned should summer drafters be? By the end of the summer, the consensus was Javonte Williams, a huge bargain. And then he wasn't.
Right. I mean, it's really ugly, really ugly. First of all, I don't believe that the Broncos wanted to do what they did in week 1. They were 11% over their expected drop back rate. Okay. 70% pass rate while trailing. Like they just gave it away. You can't do that to a rookie in his first game.
Especially a bad one too.
Yeah. All right.
I'm just kidding. He's probably fine.
He's probably fine. But anyway, that didn't work. Just give you a breakdown: 41% route rate for Javonte Williams, 30% for Jaleel McLaughlin. But McLaughlin caught 5 of 5 targets for 1 yard. But we don't care about that.
I think I got you on the
Javonte only caught two balls. And concerningly, Jaleel McLaughlin outcarried Javonte 10-8. Now, I will say Audric Estime is done for the year.
He fumbled one time.
Yeah, done for the year. And so Javonte would seem to have a lock on goal line carries. You're not going to slam, 140 pounds Jaleel McLaughlin into the line at the goal line. The problem is, will the Broncos ever score a touchdown? That's the issue.
No. I think it was Kyle who I entrapped on our waivers chat. And you're like, he caught 5 passes, Jaleel McLaughlin, thinking I wouldn't know how many yards they went for.
I don't
know.
care.
This was something similar, but not that. I don't.
Right. And I definitely I entrapped you. And tell us how many yards now, young man.
No, that was a different entrapment. You entrapped someone else with that. I wouldn't have known anything about Jaleel. I didn't have that game. We need the Ian Hartitz kind of put this is worth 5.1 PPR points for Jaleel.
Listen, I don't care. The check cashes either way. Yes, Kyle, the Steelers offense just seems so unappealing in Atlanta. Is Justin Fields even a fun streamer in this environment, or do we just got to steer clear of this whole Steelers scene?
I mean, he ran 14 times. He didn't get a ton of yards. He didn't score. But if you tell me Justin Fields,
he hurts it. 14 rushes to nowhere. But
yeah. But I don't think he's at that point of his career. I still think he has the physical tools to be the 14 carries, 104 and a touchdown that we've come to know and love from him. So, albeit. Yeah, we got the full Arthur Smith experience. We also got 14 carries for Justin Fields. And you tell me if that's even remotely sustainable, 10, 8, 9, 10 range. Yeah, maybe he's not a QB1 because he's never going to get to pass the football, but maybe he's probably QB 14 at worst if he's getting 14 carries.
Guys, what if they bring back Russ?
Nice. Good one.
I'm serious.
How funny was it that he dressed in full uniform, even though it was a scratch?
He claimed it was because of the emergency QB thing. I think was the cope there. Guess what? I guess you haven't heard the emergency QB rule, which I thought didn't pass, actually.
I'm so
No,
sorry.
no. There's no. The emergency QB3 thing is real because they passed it after Brock Purdy got hurt in the playoff game or whatever. But technically, yeah, he could have gotten in the game if everyone got hurt. And immediately in Monday or Tuesday, Mike Tomlin tells reporters like, yeah, we're pairing a Fields as our starter, as if like, okay, it doesn't matter if Wilson's healthy. We got to start game planning, and I know who we're doing it for. So they're favored in this game. You're going to have Fields at 2-0. I get that might not be the prettiest 2-0. I mean, maybe we'll see Russ down the road because
no. Russ looking at midseason retirement season. Final game. Kyle Denny came away from week 1 concerned about what was supposed to be a cool Seahawks passing attack. Denny's totally turned on our guy, Ryan Grubb. He's dropping Geno everywhere. Do you share his pessimism for the Seahawks offense after their week 1, let's see, victory over the Denver Broncos?
Oh, stop. Whatever.
So there was some good with some bad. Geno's intermediate throw rate, 10 to 19 yards downfield, was notably up compared to his previous 2 seasons in Seattle. His deep throw rate was up by a pretty marginal amount. I wouldn't read too much into it. Seattle also ran a lot more 11 personnel, up about 10% from where they were last year. Meant more routes for JSN. Didn't mean a ton of fantasy production from anyone, but I do think the more 3 receivers, some more intermediate throwing, maybe more deep throwing. It wasn't up by a large amount and the slightest. It was like a percent or so, but more pushing the ball downfield, more having wide receivers on the field. And also we saw Kenneth Walker run against a ton of light boxes. So
yeah,
a lot of stuff looked good. Not everything looked good. The football play didn't look good sometimes, but
I will say, sorry,
Kyle. No, I was going to say a lot of the periphery stuff was the stuff we expected from Ryan Grubb. Not all of it, not the pass rate over expected, but there are other aspects of his Washington Huskies offense that kind of, reared their head right away.
They were not run heavy on first down, which gives me some hope, some copium to huff on. But here's a stat that jumped out to me. I posted this on the X platform. Seahawks were up by between 1 and 10 points for 25 plays against Denver in week 1. They ran the ball on 62% of those plays. I feel like they really, really want to run the ball. And I'm afraid that our guys, DK and the rest, are going to be somewhat game script dependent.
So yeah, I was going to say, do you have any premium grade JSN copium? JSN's going to be good this year. This time it's going to count.
He's not. No, it's over for him, obviously.
Career high route rate for JSN. Don't ask if he literally did anything.
Don't ask if he finished below 20 yards receiving for the third straight.
I mean, I think really we got to stop drafting these Ohio State guys.
We do.
Oh no,
that's even Marv. Even Marv, man. Even Garrett Wilson.
No. Someone check Chris Olave's box score. Oh no, 2 for 11. Terry McLaurin. Oh no, he didn't do anything. Michael Thomas. Who'd he sign? With?
They're all bad.
Oh my god! Or they get used up too much at Ohio State.
Oh man!
Days of yore, they're too dominant in the Big Ten. They fake conference, the B1G as they call it. I just wrote Pat Slow. I mean, they won, but I mean, I don't know, who cares?
It's just the Ramondre show. They're just going to feed him.
Yeah,
that's it.
They might go 1-16 too. The Bengals down, absolutely horrific.
Good.
Bengals down, just truly, truly horrific. We are down with the show because it's over. We made it through 15 games. A lot of really good stuff out there. So much good stuff from Kyle and Denny. Kyle has his 32 stats, a stat for every team. He has a start 'em, sit 'em coming out on Friday. He's going to have his waiver wires, of course, coming out Monday. Denny has the regression files. He has the funnel report. He has his Friday Q&A at noon Eastern. I've got my rankings, which I'll be updating now continuously between now and Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Going to have the Sunday aftermath after the play is over on Sunday. I'm going to say the word Sunday 7 more times. So for Kyle Dvorchak, for Denny Carter, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back Sunday evening with our Week 2 recap show.